This is a tasty burger.
I'll have what she's having.
Alright guys, welcome to another episode of Damn Fine Meats, and today what we're going to be doing here is, in honor of Donnie Brasco, we're going to make the Fugitburgur. The reason it's the Fugitburgur is because it's not actually a burger at all. You should forget about the fact that I just said the word burger. So, what you're going to need is you're going to need some type of marinara or meat sauce to go over the top of this, which we have here in this pot. I started it honestly yesterday, because if there's one thing about making homemade pasta sauce, you should let that marinate for a while. Let them flavors get good and together. But I'll throw the recipe in the link below, so you guys can, if you want to make the same thing I'm making, you can go ahead and do that. Or you can just buy your own homemade pasta sauce. What you also need is you're going to need some chicken cutlets, some breadcrumbs, beaten egg, some oil to deep fry some stuff, and some lasagna noodles. These noodles themselves are already done. Lasagna noodles, they don't need to be boiled or anything like that, so if you're going to go about making this with normal lasagna noodles, you're going to want to boil those, then let them kind of dry back out for a little bit before you get into the actual recipe itself. But here we go. So, while we're heating this back up to get it up to our correct temperature on our sauce here, you're also going to want to preheat your frying skillet. When it gets good and hot, we're going to be deep frying lasagna noodles first, which is why they need to be fully finished. And then we'll be frying our chicken cutlets right in the same oil, as long as you make sure that your temperature's right and you don't overboil or overheat your oil and then it goes bad. So you're going to want this is about 1.5 cups of oil, because we're doing some amount of frying here. Honestly, in this pan, which is 10.5 inches, it's going to be about 1/4 inch of oil, 1/8 inch of oil. You don't want to do a full fry on it unless you have a full fryer, but most full fryers aren't going to be able to fit your lasagna noodles. So while we're waiting for that to heat up, we're just going to get our chicken breaded here. Standard kind of way to go about doing this. So we just got some breadcrumbs that we've added some seasoning to. We've added some basil, some garlic powder, some oregano, things like that, to give it Italian style seasoning. We got eggs here, 2 of them that we've just whipped together. You're going to want to dredge your chicken tenders in the egg in order to get them good and wet. Then we're just going to go into our breadcrumbs. Want to make sure to get breadcrumbs all over this. You can do kind of just one layer of breadcrumbs, but I really like crisp type texture when I'm doing like tomato or chicken parmesan. So after you get this first layer on, you just want to kind of press it in. We're going to go right back into our egg mixture. Then from here, we're going right back into our breadcrumbs again. And you're going to want to do this for all of the chicken that you're going to do. Since we're just making one serving, we're pretty much just taking 2 small chicken cutlets here. You can use whatever type of chicken you want. I just prefer white meat breast cutlets for this, but if you want, you could also do dark meat by doing boneless, skinless thigh meat. It'll be a little bit juicier because dark meat tends to be a little bit juicier than the white meat parts. So, just going to let that go. We'll throw this back on here. Alright guys, so our oil is heated up all the way here. So what we're going to do is, since these are pre-done, we're just going to drop them in. We're going to deep fry these to where they're almost pierogi-like as the base of our open-faced chicken parm. So we're just going to drop these in. Since there's not a lot of water in them, that's why you're not hearing that usual sizzle that you get. That's completely fine. You can see the second they start hitting, you get some bubbles forming along the outside, and they're starting to rise on their own. With fried food, you know it's done because it'll start to float on top of the oil. That means that there's more oil inside than there is water, and that's the whole purpose of frying, is essentially it boils, it creates that Maillard reaction on the outside, but then it boils all the water on the inside, which then evaporates and comes out as steam. So fried food is typically done when it starts floating to the top. So since these are already done and they're just pasta, they don't take very long at all. We're just going to put them on a towel here to soak up some of that excess oil. You see it's changed to a light brown color. You'll also be able to smell it. It smells a little bit like roasting almonds. It gets a nutty type smell because what ends up happening is the flour on the inside of the pasta ends up cooking, and when flour cooks, it actually produces an almond smell. So, you probably only need one of these pieces, but we're just going to do both. What'll end up happening is we'll just kind of match the ones that look the best together. But you can see, especially on these already cooked ones, you get some bubbling up along the top where the creates air pockets within the gluten expansion. And it'll get progressively a little bit darker as you get carryover heat, even after you pull it off. So, it's just a thing. You can flip them if you want in the pan. It's not really going to make a huge bit of difference because they're not in there for long enough for it to actually matter. Also because they're so thin, even this 1/4 inch of oil is already completely kind of submerged them. Or they're submerged in them. So we're just going to pull these off and kind of stack them crisscross or right on top. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add our chicken breast right inside the same oil as well. You want to make sure to do this pretty evenly, which is why I have another spatula here. You don't want to kind of drop them in because you don't want to get all that splashback on you, everything like that. Hot oil. So these are going to go in the oil. Make sure that there's enough space to where they're separated. You don't want them to be too close together or else they'll end up sticking together. And then your crust will end up getting stuck to one piece of chicken and not the other piece of chicken. Also, by overcrowding your pan, you end up dropping the heat of the oil, which then produces a kind of oily interior because since the heat drops so low, it just kind of enters in without actually cooking. So you don't want to have oily chicken because that's a bad experience, especially since we're going to have these crisp kind of pasta that it's sitting on, then the sauce on top. You don't want to have an oily mouthfeel. Chicken breast, if you're using whole chicken breast and not the cutlets, big whole chicken breast, you're going to want to fillet them in half in order to get a thinner product, or else it's going to take a lot longer to cook. If you take a chicken breast that's roughly this size, it's going to take about 6 or 7 minutes on each side to cook all the way through. Or you can simply fry them in your pan. Make sure they're nice and golden brown, then pull them out and finish them in the oven. If you're doing it that way, you can take a 350-degree oven after you've fried them for about a minute or two on each side. When they get golden brown, you put them into a preheated 350-degree oven and let them go for about another 10 to 12 minutes. So we're just going to let these fry here for about a minute or two on each side. And I'll show you what it should look like on the outside. And then we'll kind of go back to finish cooking them in assemblage when we come back. Fugitburgur. So we've already flipped the chicken on one side here. So at this point, we're just going to kind of pull it off. And we're just going to set it here to let it rest for a little bit. Now, realistically, we've been away for quite a few minutes. At about a minute or two, we could have pulled this stuff off and everything like that, but we decided to go just full pan fry. Like I said, if you're going to do it in the oven, you're going to want to pull it off about a minute or two after it kind of browns on each side. Then you're just going to want to go ahead and throw it in the oven. But you can Hear that real crisp outside. We're letting it rest, say the meats kind of reinvigorate themselves with the juices, which, like I said, started boiling, leaving out through the top. We have our sauce here that we're just going to give a quick stir to make sure everything's still real incorporated together. Like I said, the sauce is just ground meat, some basil, some oregano, some garlic, some a little bit of red pepper flakes, ground beef, a little bit of grated Parmesan cheese to give a little binding together. We sauteed some onions that went in prior to it even starting. So we're just letting that heat up all the way. And while that's going on, you can see that our noodles here have dried all the way back through, at least the ones on top have. And these will be the ones that we just throw everything on top of. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to cut through this chicken. We're going to cut it with a slight bias, which means pretty much you're going to want to cut pseudo-diagonally, so you get a nice fan out. Because of how crisp this is on the outside, you're going to get some of that breadcrumb kind of breaking off and things like that, which is completely fine. That whistling you hear is the sauce, our sauce boiling, which is great because you want this to be just as hot as your chicken. You don't want it to kind of cool back down, everything like that. So we're going to turn that off. We'll pop that lid open to where it's not making that real aggressive sound in you guys' ears. And we're going to get to assemblage here. Look at this fancy new plate. Wow.
Wow, 7 projects. Wow. Wow. Wow.
Alright, so what we're going to do here, we're just going to fan that across the top of both of those pieces. Just going to want to mix this together again. As it's heating up, it separates out a little bit because, of course, even though the meat, the ground beef was kind of drained and everything, it's still releasing some amount of fat. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to kind of hold this sideways, let it let off some of those juices, some of that excess. We're just going to spoon that right across the top. So there you go. Donnie Brasco, Fugitburgur. What burger? Chicken Parmesan. You can eat this however you want. You can throw some more cheese on top. You can, if you want, you can actually do this just on regular cooked pasta. You can do this however you want because at the end of the day, this is all yours. And at the end of the day, it's another damn fine meat. See you next time.